There's a kind of pressure that a lot of founders learn to live inside. You stay sharp, you keep moving, and from the outside, it can look like everything is working. But a lot of people are running their business from a reactive state and calling it discipline. Then they wonder why their thinking gets narrow, their relationships get strained, and their body starts keeping score before they do. So, with that, I'm excited to be joined today by Sara Nakamura. Sara is someone who has spent years working behind the scenes with high performers, helping them see what pressure is doing to their body, their thinking, and the way they lead. In our conversation, we discuss what adaptive intelligence actually is, why resilience by itself is not enough, how awareness and regulation change the way you can make decisions under pressure, and why real performance starts breaking down long before most people notice it. If you get value from this conversation, be sure to subscribe and share it with a friend. And now here is my conversation with Sara Nakamura. Sara, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So when you say adaptive intelligence, what do you actually mean by that?
Adaptive intelligence is the other AI. We are so inundated with so many great things in technology. It's moving so fast, and we're getting just so bombarded with either the technical aspect of it or just running at a faster pace. And what adaptive intelligence is really bringing in our sensory intelligence as well as our emotional intelligence together to really adapt to the fast pace changes that are going on in today's world.
Building adaptive intelligence is really critical in order to be able to utilize and take advantage of artificial intelligence or really any other technological shift that comes in the future, which obviously is inevitable. How would you say that adaptive intelligence is different from something like resilience?
Resilience is definitely part of it. And in the sense of adaptive is not just adapting to what's in front of you in the screen or, what's happening in social media, but it also comes back into your body. I've been in the wellness space for over 20 years. And if your body's not functioning well, guess what? Neither's anything else in your life. So when I talked about that adaptive part of it, and compared to that resilience I kind of see as that armor and that shield that we all have. And that adaptive part of it is how we get to it and how we just move through the space at any given time.
I like to learn things sometimes and understanding new concepts by looking at the contrast. So if somebody doesn't have adaptive intelligence, what does that look like?
If they don't have adaptive intelligence, essentially when things come at them, they're in the reactive mode. If you've ever heard of the fight, flight, or freeze, it's that kind of on situation. So it's like reacting to a fire. Instead of seeing the smoke and seeing it kind of fester, you're already in this blaze and you're kind of like back on your heels. And so when you're not able to adapt and have that alignment with what your specific path is or goals are, or however you want to, see yourself in the moment and where you're going in your life and in your career, if you don't adapt to it, you kind of feel stuck. And when you feel stuck, you're not able to move. And if you don't have that flexibility, then you only have one choice. And it's either to go or to stop, as opposed to seeing the other possibilities that are out there in real time. And when you kind of open up that foveal view, you're able to see more choices and move and react faster.
As I'm hearing you explain this concept, I'm in my head just saying, having this skill or this ability, having high adaptive intelligence, I feel like is absolutely critical in any journey. And I feel like that's the same thing with every journey. You have this goal that you want to go achieve, and then you're going to create some initial plan on how you're going to get there. But every time, I would argue that 100% of the time, the plan that you have from the jump is going to change, right? Things are going to change. You're going to learn something along the way that's going to require you to change course or adjust your plan, which that adjustment, that changing course, that adapting, right, really is adaptive intelligence. So it seems like adaptive intelligence and building up this ability is really critical in every journey.
And speaking of critical, it's about critical thinking also, because when we start looking at, let's just say, AI as more than just a tool, when we start relying on it, when we start relying on maybe our teams to help us scale or, outsourcing or anything like that, we lose that critical faculty. And when we lose that critical thinking part of us, then things start happening that we're unaware of. And then things go sideways even quicker. I look at it as, I don't just have a plan B, but if you can run through plan C, D, E, and F very easily and just go, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. Yep, there we go. And just have that available to you when you learn kind of a systematic way of doing it. It's like working from the inside out and being on the offensive rather than the defensive.
So it sounds like, obviously, I mean, you wrote a book on the subject. You've done a lot of thinking about what adaptive intelligence is. And I imagine as a part of that process, you've broken down adaptive intelligence into a few key components, right? You've hinted at a few, right? Critical thinking, resilience, obviously being a part of it. So if you could you break down what adaptive intelligence is, or what makes up that ability of adaptive intelligence into, like, what are the components of adaptive intelligence?
Adaptive intelligence is kind of that first component is, getting back into your body, understanding what's happening. Are you stressed out? Are you overwhelmed? Are you in a reactive mode? So getting back in touch with yourself. And if we're not in that space, then obviously, getting to that next step isn't going to be as easy. So once we get into that adaptive space, and see what's around us, we can make an informed decision. And then I use the acronym ACT, and adaptive intelligence is the first part of it. C is the connection. And then so we connect to what's happening in the room, whether it's, let's just say you're connecting in a room of 10 people with your team. What's going on for each team member? What part do they play in this meeting or in the role of your business? And connecting to what is important in that component of the bigger picture, and what are the nonverbal cues that surround it. So being able to pick up if somebody's stressed out, being able to pick up if they're not fully in the room, and also understanding what your body language is saying and doing. Because sometimes as CEOs or founders or owners or the heads of companies, you have this singular agenda of making your business better. And so what happens a lot of times is you just kind of bark out instructions or things that need to be done, as opposed to going, oh, wait, what's the bigger picture? So connecting to that part of it. And then once you do that, you're able to then take it to the next level and thrive. And then that's when you have all of the good things that surround you. So you can celebrate your wins. You can regroup with your team. You can make that next step to whether you're, delivering for a client, and go, okay, what's the next step in our process? So I take you through that act so you can act now.
Love it. One thing that I notice in your work too is that you don't want people relying on you or your team every single time that they feel off, right? You want them to be able to regulate themselves and kind of fall back on their training or the skills that they've built in order to continue to put this into practice. So how do you actually teach that, or this system, in a way that builds independence? Kind of how do you help build people up in order to be able to regulate themselves?
Self-regulation there is definitely a foundation, and then it's different for everybody. So we have some baseline things that we can do: regulating your breath, getting back into what's happening for you, slowing down your breath. So if you take an inhalation and then on your exhalation, it's longer than how you inhale, it brings your nervous system down. So if you're coding and you're, on a deadline, and you just do a simple breath in and then out even longer, that's a simple and quick, easy way that doesn't even disrupt anything that you're doing. So that human latency is usually what holds us up. And so we don't want to have that interruption. So that's one of the things that you can do just as a baseline. And then I take whatever else your stuck points are, and then help you or your team through that as well.
It feels like there's some important story here on how you discovered this and kind of how you put this together. So I'd love if you could kind of tell us the backstory behind adaptive intelligence and this whole methodology that how did you discover this?
The way some people know adaptive intelligence is super techy, super sciencey, really big words, and I just don't have that background. And the way that, I brought adaptive intelligence back down to kind of the everyday verbiage, it goes back to before I got into the wellness industry. I was climbing the corporate ladder here in Las Vegas, and I was in management. I was opening up 3 Starbucks locations. I was doing all the back end computer programming as well as I had to do the hardware side of it too, simply for efficiency. One morning I was in super early and one of my colleagues took a quick coffee break. I was trying to help her through that because we were all exhausted and overwhelmed. And our boss came in early and he just started yelling at her. I was taken aback by the fact that he had no sympathy whatsoever. I end up getting a phone call. And when you get a phone call like 4 in the morning, you know something's wrong. And so I picked up the phone call, I stepped out, and it was, my dog, the news that my dog had died. It crushed me. It just completely crushed me that I was at work. She had aggressive cancer and she went very quickly. But that started putting things into perspective of what's important to me. And my job was the most important thing to me at the time because I was the only person to do the back end, because none of our terminals could function. We couldn't do sales if I wasn't there, if anything went wrong. I took that step back and I eventually quit my job within the day, I think is what it was,
Wow.
and decided to go completely opposite direction. I went into wellness, became a massage therapist, came board certified in it, and then I started consulting. Then I started melding the worlds together, not only business, and I did a couple other businesses along the way, but really having the understanding that, there's not just the business side, but there's the home side, the emotional side, the relationships. And why can't we have both? Why can't we have personal peace as well as power in our profession? So that's why I created this system.
Amazing. Personal peace and power in our profession. I think that's gold. If you hadn't written that down yet, definitely write that down. So a lot of the business books or business concepts that you consume are purely just logical, like kind of these frameworks that you should kind of apply and put into practice. And most of the time, a lot of these frameworks, however, this is changing, I believe, now as we've learned more about this and it's become more okay to kind of talk about your emotional well-being. But a lot of the, historical popular business practices or business systems kind of completely neglect kind of that internal emotional side of the equation, which is really everything, right? Like you talked about at the beginning, having that, health or the internal, your personal well-being is the foundation of any success or any activity that you do, right? Like you'll realize that as soon as you get sick, right? As soon as you get sick, you can't do anything, you can't function, you can't do anything. So tell me a little bit more about that internal, your own health and wellness and well-being and emotional side of the equation in this system.
I'll let you in on a little secret. I've worked on over 20,000 bodies in massage therapy. I've worked on CEOs, I've worked on billionaires, I've worked on many people that are so amazing in their own profession. And what you see outwardly in books, in interviews, on paper is very different than behind the scenes, what they're going through emotionally, what they're going through in their own bodies. That's not something that anybody usually wants to talk about or put in the forefront. Obviously confidentiality, but there's so many people that have either been on the verge of breakdowns, burnout. Some people have not even been able to get out of bed in certain times because their bodies start to shut down and because they're neglecting their health, because they're so focused on, the other things that you know them for. And it's kind of what we put out in social media, right? It's kind of the best version of you, but behind the scenes, there's other things going on. And that's kind of how I view health. It's the behind the scenes. I've been the behind the scenes coach for a long time to some people, and it's not in the forefront. And I will tell you that a lot of people use mindset, they use emotional regulation. Yoga hasn't even been something that anybody talked about until the last couple of years, but so many people have been doing yoga and Pilates for years and years and years, but it's not something that they talk about, right? So I
Yeah.
think that we're just normalizing some of these conversations and kind of putting it outwardly before you have the breakdown. There's been some stories out there where, he was running multi-million dollar companies and he could not get out of bed for 3 days. He talked to his company and he couldn't make appearances and they just didn't know what was happening. They thought he was dying. Of course, they canceled his entire schedule. And then he created something else around his well-being after that. I didn't personally coach him, but it's more prevalent than you would think.
Yeah. And I mean, you are hearing more and more stories about it. And the more like the idea of never meet your heroes, but like when you meet these people, you can see kind of just how worn out and kind of exhausted some of them can be. Or if you like get them to kind of open up and tell you a little bit more about their experience, people seem pretty unhappy when they're just on the never ending chase and optimization for performance, whatever, and they just completely neglect everything else in their life purely for the performance of whatever business objective they're aspiring to. So you talked about in the beginning that, there's a certain foundation that you need to build with everybody. And I imagine that that's kind of the foundational understanding of the system, of the concept, of the equation and how it all works. But then actually putting it into practice looks different for everybody. So on the health and wellness side of things, right, whether it's meditation, yoga, I do both of those things and I love them. They've had such a positive effect on me in my life. But what is that effect that those kind of practices like meditation, yoga, or whatever it is for somebody, what is that effect that we're looking for it to have in this system?
The effect that you're looking for it to have is getting to, the best version of yourself. A lot of times, people in business, we talk about, okay, how are we scaling? How are we going to get the next level? Where are our clients coming from? Let's advance our marketing. But when you're not able to show up, nobody plans for downtime. Nobody plans for, tech to break down, but you don't plan for your body to break down. And so when you're taking care of that internal system, I call it the internal system. We have software, we have hardware, and the software part of it is that emotional state. The brain has our limbic system, and it's in charge of decision making. And whether or not we like to admit, we make emotional decisions. We think with our thinker, we think with our neocortex. Absolutely. We weigh the pros and cons. What's the data around it? But we have to have that emotional buy-in for our limbic system to say yes. And it's that switch and that trigger. And so when we look at it from the other perspective, when we look at it from the limbic side also doesn't have language. So it's hard to articulate what our feelings are. So not to get mushy, but if you've ever been in love, right? You go, why do you love that person? I don't know, but I just do, right? You can see it in your body. You can see it in your expression. You can feel it in the air, but it's not in charge of language. So when we, again, make decisions, when we think about buying, when we think about scaling, it's an emotional decision that goes, yes, that's right. Yes, that feels good, even though we're using a lot of our brain skills.
So these practices of meditation, yoga, whatever it might be for you, but just this practice of creating space, stillness, silence in your life, maybe that's just one part of the health and wellness. Do these practices kind of just help us just get more in tune with that limbic side, that emotional side of our body? Is that the goal?
Absolutely. It's kind of like when you walk into a business meeting, you're not thinking about, did you eat fruit? Did you have enough fiber today? Right? That's something you do behind the scenes. So when you do yoga, when you do meditation, that's at home. But when you get into the boardroom, when you get in front of a client, when you get on a Zoom call, what's really important then? All those things you just did? No, it's the basis. It's like going to the gym and lifting weights. You're not doing it in front of a client. It's the basis of what you do. But what's important is when you are front facing with someone else, when you are in a high pressure meeting, what is your body doing? Are you able to regulate it in a few seconds? If you're super
Mm,
nervous, are you able to really calm yourself down without, breathing, which is
yeah.
great if you're doing meditation outside. But where it really counts is in that high stakes area. And whether it be in a business meeting or a one-on-one with a client, it's important to be able to do it in the moment and
Mm,
reading your body language, understanding that, you're nodding your head, you're shaking you're okay, you're in a little bit of agreement with me. And you're going, okay, I understand what you're saying, the way your eye patterns are moving, right? So seeing the cues that you have allows me to connect to you and to have a different conversation unless you're looking off going, okay, I'm going to ask my next question, not being engaged. For me to be able to pick up on those cues allows me to have, a better connection with you.
And I feel like, again, a part of that is in order to be able to pick up on those cues, you need to have some level of internal stillness, of being able to kind of turn off the think. Oh my God, thinking ahead, like just nonstop, just motor and bicycle, the monkey on the bicycle with the tambourines or whatever they're called, like in the head. You need to be able to kind of slow that down. But that is built up through the practice you do at home, whether that's, again, meditation, journaling, just finding ways to create stillness. And again, that sounds like it's just one element of this larger system. So obviously you need to do the work in your own time, right, at home, behind the scenes, right, building up that basis, building up that foundation. But when you do get into those high stakes situations, whether that's the meeting with the client, in the boardroom, whatever that is, but when you're in a high stakes situation, what exercises or practices do you teach to help kind of regulate in the moment?
And again, a lot of it is the basis before you get up onto what I call the stage. It's like Disneyland. They talk about, the people that wear the costumes, they have to get the costume on just right. Everything has to fit well, all those things. And then when they open the doors, they're on stage and they have to be fully in character. And so that's what it's like sometimes with people that are front facing in front of the camera or heads of companies. And so in the moment, like I said, I have that breathing technique. I have a few different things, but it's also, where's your tension? And it's really great to be able to kind of have that basis and then go, okay, are my shoulders up here? If my shoulders are tense, if I'm at the computer all day and I feel that tension in my body, how do I release that? And I start to do it just naturally because I've done the work. And you don't see me going, okay, tense up my shoulders. And we can do it right here. So tense up your shoulders, tight, 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 and then drop it down. And what that does is send signals to your brain of, oh, maybe my shoulders were a little bit tight. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're leaning forward, we're at the computer all the time. We start having that tech neck, right? That little, it's called a dowager's hump, but we call it the tech neck these days. And when you're in that, how do you go, I'm starting to, feel that tension. It's that body awareness. You roll your shoulders back. When you start to roll your shoulders back, that opens up your chest, opens up your blood flow, opens up your ability to breathe better. Just that simple action of rolling your shoulders back. And guess what? It looks better too. So those few things are simple things that you can do in the moment to have you feel better, look better, breathe easier, self-regulate in the moment.
And what I'm hearing when you're explaining that too is an idea, kind of a foundational principle of change, is that it starts with awareness, right? It kind of starts with an awareness of maybe the posture things that you're doing wrong that are making it more difficult to regulate in that moment, right? The more tense shoulders, the hunchback, right? Whatever that may be, maybe the crossing the arms, the, turning to the side, whatever that might be, right? It starts with an awareness, and then you can create the change.
When you have the awareness, that's the first step. We have that in our consciousness. It's something that you and I can talk about. But on that deeper level, it goes to the subconscious part of ourselves. And the subconscious part of ourselves, sometimes people talk about, sometimes we don't, but that deep-seated level that we have in our bodies, if we didn't have our conscious level or subconscious level, we wouldn't regulate our breathing. We wouldn't sleep well. We wouldn't, repair and rest as we're sleeping when we have our eyes closed. We wouldn't digest. We wouldn't breathe automatically. So those are some of the functions that our subconscious does, and our autonomic nervous system regulates as well.
For anybody that's listening, that says, okay, this makes sense on an individual level, but they're still operating within an organization or an environment that is chaos is the norm. How could they bring this to their organization or their team?
Well, you can bring me in and teach it, number one, but
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But, if you want to, do it on an individual basis, if it starts with you, right? Everything starts with us. If you want to start to, build your own boundaries, and boundaries aren't just, hey, I'm not listening to you, or, hey, I'm not taking something else onto my plate, but boundaries are our core foundation. And when we establish our boundaries, and not just professionally and personally, when we create one boundary system, again, we do work around this, but when you have that boundary, you have an understanding of what bumps up against your boundary that can set you off into the bad space, right? If somebody bumps up against your boundary, what happens a lot of times? You react by saying something negative, you tell them no right away, and you cut off that connection or communication, either way. But when you're able to go, okay, they're bumping up against my boundary. Okay, I have a couple choices. And maybe the choice is to go, okay, let me give them space and listen to what they're saying. Or the boundary is, I don't have time for that, but can we connect about this in 30 minutes? I have to finish this project. So it's about the way you approach it. And a lot of
Mm.
times what happens in especially corporate situations is we go, don't have time. And we cut people off when we just keep going because, we're all on deadlines. And sometimes people take that personally, but we have that negative bias that happens too. And we don't think we're taking it personally, but then we are. And then we don't ask the next time, or we
Mm.
don't go to our colleagues for advice or help the next time.
So when you are brought in by an organization to kind of facilitate this transformation within their team, within their culture, what does that look like? How do you kind of guide them through that process?
It goes back to awareness. We go through, what are the stuck points? What do you think the stuck points are? And what are the results you're looking for? That's the first thing. Obviously, if you're not going to have somebody come in if you don't know that there's an existing problem. A lot of times what happens is the problem that you think it's the problem that's over here. And so we kind of take a look at what's happening within our organization. So when we create that awareness that's around it, not even on the superficial level, but that's where we start. And then we kind of dig in deeper as we go along. And then we get to the core. The core is, again, that connection part of it. What's the foundation of your organization? Simon Sinek, for instance, he starts with why. What I do with that why process, which that's what I'm trained in to do also, have that discovery of that core and that foundation so that you can operate from the inside out and not just how do you do what you do and what do you do, but why do you do it? Why are you showing up every day? And you
Mm.
as the organizer, the CEO, the owner of the company, but why do people around you show up? Whatever role that they're in, why are they there? And not just, to fill a position cog in that organization, but intrinsically, why are they there? Okay.
Mm.
And then when we go through that process, then that next step is, okay, let's see the stuck points. Let's just blow through them. And then I have a few techniques that we go through on a really, I don't want to call it a deep level. It sounds scary. It's not really scary, but we go through, what are those stuck points? What's holding you back? And then again, get to that thriving place where you can celebrate the wins. It goes back to the act that we talked about before.
Yeah. So it starts with you coming in, you organize, a detailed awareness of, okay, what are the stuck points? What are the problems? And what are the actual problems? Like not what you say the problem is, but maybe that hidden problem that you're not even considering that actually is the root and cause of that problem. Once that discovery has taken place, then you kind of facilitate a discovery again of the why, right? And I do think that the why is very much a discovery, kind of how Simon Sinek lays it out in Start With Why. It's not something that you force, it's something that's more discovered. It's like it's an existing reality that is there within the team and within the organization, within the heartbeat, the culture of
Mhm.
the people involved. So then you can tie this whole process to this why, right? And attach it to this reason for being within the organization. And then you facilitate again through that act process so they can get to that final stage of thrive and celebrate the wins.
That's
I love
right.
it.
And it's exactly what you said. I facilitate it. I don't judge it. I don't tell them what they have to do. It's none of that. It's their language. It's their business. And I'm just a conduit in it. And, going back to massage therapy, when I'm in a room with somebody and help them facilitate healing, I'm not healing anybody, but what I'm doing is helping that facilitation. Their
Mm.
bodies are healing. Their bodies are going through a process of letting go, getting rid of the stuck points. So if you see that equation between the body and the business, that's what I do.
Amazing. Do you think that you've stumbled into a real gap here in the existing marketplace? So you mentioned earlier a free gift. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about that. What are we getting?
It's a reboot. In 10 minutes, you're going to be able to have an adaptive reboot. Let me tell you where to get it first. Go to freegiftfromsara.com. The backstory behind this is during the pandemic, we all went through what we went through, and it was unprecedented. And unfortunately, one of my colleagues lost hope. She took her own life, left 3 children behind. And at that point in my life, I said, I need to still be able to help people, even though I was isolated at home like everyone else was. And so what I did was I took a lot of the techniques that I would use with my clients, and I essentially put them into a book, called it Stressed Out and Don't Know What to Do. So it's 2-minute techniques when you're exhausted, overwhelmed, and burnt out. And from that book, I also needed to go, okay, what else can somebody do to help them rest, to help them let go of the tension that they have in their lives, and then also help to re-energize them. So it's the adaptive reboot. It's 10 minutes exactly. You can do all of those things. And I really created it for myself to begin with, because I needed self-regulation and I needed a reboot myself. But I really put it out there to everybody now who wants to take this work to the next step, because it really helps not only you, but send it to somebody you care about and let them be the better version of themselves too.
I mean, that's a powerful story. And I feel like what is cool about this and what I've heard from other creators that we've had on or other founders that we've had on the podcast is all great products and services start by solving a problem for yourself. So you had this problem, you found a solution, and now you're sharing it with us. So really appreciate that. If you had a giant billboard that everyone in the world could see for 10 seconds, what would it say and why?
Ignite your connection so that you can inspire others. It goes back to us. I've hidden for a long time. I've been behind the scenes for a very long time, and I was not really comfortable in the spotlight. But I also know that when I ignite my own connection and I'm able to connect to other people and I help them ignite their own light, they get to shine. And then when we connect, we can help transform the world. And I know that sounds like a big, massive goal. And
Hmm.
hey, what if we get halfway there? What if we get a quarter
Yeah.
there? We're still, helping change in the world.
Yeah. Everybody's got a divine spark within them. And if you can help ignite that within yourself, connect with others, bring that out in them, make a world a much better place. I love it.
Yeah.
That's a
And
topic for a whole nother conversation for sure.
and if I can put it into a sentence, it's create your wow moments now.
Go make them happen. It's not going to just happen, right? You got to go out and create it. And I think that create word in that sentence is super important. You got to go make it happen. It's not just going to happen on accident. You got to be intentional. You got to be aware about what those wow moments would be. And then, okay, now I know what my wow moments would be. How am I going to get there? You're going to have this plan on how you're going to create those wow moments, and then it's going to change. And then you got to have adaptive intelligence along that journey of creating those wow moments to make it happen. So I love it. Sara, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. My main takeaway from this conversation is that a lot of people think that the problem is pressure, when really the deeper problem is reactivity. If you are always operating from tension, urgency, and narrowed attention, you may still get things done, but you stop seeing things clearly. Your decisions get smaller, your range gets smaller, and over time, that does not just affect your health. It affects your judgment, your team, and the quality of what you build. Strong founders do not just push harder. They build the ability to notice what state they are in, regulate it, and respond with intention instead of reflex. If you want to get connected with Sara Nakamura, you can find her links in the description of this episode, including her free adaptive reboot at freegiftfromsara.com. If you're running a coaching program, course, or mastermind and your clients aren't completing the work, download the free Program Execution System Toolkit in the description. It shows you how to install execution infrastructure so clients actually follow through and get the result that your program promises. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.